let's just dig into this a little bit more when we talk about the main character in your story. And now I want to talk more generally about customer stories because you're out there getting these customer stories. And it's important, and I know that this has been drilled into you as part of the business model canvas. You've got to look at lots of different possible customer sets, but it's really important to start with some focus and have a customer you can build a narrative around. If you have a zillion different customers, you can't tell a single story, and it's really hard to follow, and it's hard for you to focus on your innovation. I love Facebook as an example because when Facebook started, it had a very specific customer in mind. We saw him in that video. It was Harvard students. It was Mark Zuckerberg's friends. Well, it went from that to other college students. If you remember the movie, they started spreading it around to about 10 of the top tier colleges. Then it went to all colleges. Then it went to colleges overseas, if you remember the scene where the guys in England saw it, that it was now in England. And then people graduated from college, and now post-grads had Facebook. And on and on and on. So it grew from that original, satisfying that original customer, understanding that customer and really satisfying it. And if you really build a great business, you can grow and pick second and third target customers. So of course, the fastest growing segment on Facebook now is, well, I was going to say people my age, right? I'm not a grandpa yet, but close. But we use Facebook to stalk our children, right? It's a completely different use case. But the fact is, they couldn't have satisfied my needs and how I would use Facebook as a much different target until they built the business on the face of one really strong target audience. And the customer discovery process is really a great process, and it's really interesting. Here's an illustration I want to show you of someone who went from a one-sided market to a two-sided market through a customer discovery, or went from a single customer to a two-sided market. You guys went from a 5 to a two-sided market, right? Which is a really interesting story that Steve shared on that post. But in this particular case, she had another discovery by getting out and talking to customers. So let's see. This is an NSF I-Core project.
Hi, I'm Varsha and I'm the entrepreneur lead, and meet my teammate Kriti Pant, who's the technical lead. Hi. And we are team Red Bioscope.
So let's take a look at our workspace, which is a studio come garage come incubator. So the other day I just bumped into one of my old friends, and she's also an extremely passionate photographer who was sharing with me some of the problems that she's been facing.
I usually share my work on your photo sharing sites. But the problem is it always goes unnoticed. All I need is a platform to share my work, connect with the right people. Then I started painting Photoscope.
Expanding on this idea, we have created an online visual storytelling tool. And this platform will give photographers a chance to get noticed, a purpose to shoot, and a channel to make money. We already have 10,000 registered users on our tool in the last 6 weeks. After we started the class, the most important thing that we learned was that create a value and build a promise. We did over 100+ customer interviews, and the one that strikes out the most is this accidental customer who is a semi-literate lady who owns a beauty parlor. I met her on a small village road, and while speaking with her, I showed her this Photoscope tool, and she just got hooked onto it. And this lady, who has never clicked a picture, started taking pictures using her cheap Android smartphone. And this is when we got the idea of PhotoCV, which surely has a great potential here. We understood the actual meaning of pivot right at this stage. In fact, we also realized that we have a two-sided market. One who would create photo stories, and another who's going to use them. Our journey has been a roller coaster ride. And after turns and pivots and changing the lanes, here we are, at the right place, at the right time, with the right MVP.
Okay, so she was really articulate and interesting in telling her story. And again, she met this person, and just again, think about telling a story. Where did she meet the woman? And who was the woman that she met? Hairdresser. Where'd she meet her?
Country Road.
Country Road somewhere, right? So we're already imagining her meeting this rural hairdresser in a country road, someone you wouldn't necessarily think would be involved in this type of experience. And then she identified exactly how she thought she was going to provide a service to her and have the photographers and these people who need these photographs to support their businesses, how she was going to bring them together in this two-sided market. But it's very evocative, and you could see how that customer discovery led to a great pivot in this story. Okay, let's talk about the character's motivation, digging for insights. I always like to find stories where the insights are deep, right? The deeper the insights, the deeper you can get into the pain or the experience. Usually it leads to a better innovation. I love to tell this story of a competition I judged. There's this competition called the Intel Global Challenge that Berkeley has every year, where teams compete all over the globe on almost every continent, and then the best teams come to Berkeley in November, and there's about 300, 400 participants that come down, about 30 teams. One of the teams was a group called Simplistic, which were expat Indians who were living in Singapore. And they were telling us this insight about the modern Indian couple. Where they said for the first time, both the man and the woman in many upwardly mobile Indian couples are actually working, which is great, better for the family, building up the family's ability to send their kids to good schools and all the things they want to do, live healthily. But what they're not getting is they're losing some of their culture. And culture is really important to these families. And what they're losing is they're losing the ability to spend time doing things like making some of the foods that are important to the culture. One of the foods that's really important to the culture is the roti. And the roti takes a really long time to make. Usually it takes about 30 minutes to make a roti, and they just don't have the time to do that anymore. And I'm going to tell you the rest of the story in just a moment, but it was that insight that led to an innovation. Now I want to show you an insight that sometimes you discover an insight that can literally sink your hypothesis and kind of sink your project, or at least temporarily sink your project. And that's okay too, because at least you're learning at some point early on that you have to find a different direction. You have to keep digging to find that direction. This is a project called Rapisense, another NSF I-Corps project. And they were developing a detection device for foodborne pathogens, but they ran into some walls in their customer inquiries by getting some good insights.
Chia Chen. Kerry Wilson, Team Mentor.
Sunny Shah, here, and we are
Team Rapisense.
Developing a fast, easy-to-use test for detection of foodborne pathogens. To commercialize, I used to think we have people, technology, all we need is the money. But quickly realized that customer discovery is the most important piece of the puzzle. In the beginning, I got several nightmares of the teaching team yelling at me, especially John Bacon saying, "No sleeping, Sonny. You should be getting out of the building." We got out of the building and visited industries from across the country. Getting the interview was the hard part. If you shut up and listen, customers love talking. 37% of my interviews lasted more than an hour, which then led to a lot of quick learning.
One of our early mistakes was made in the first day of interviews when we met a few independent butchers. We jumped to an early conclusion that this would be a new market segment for our technology. We learned quickly that this was not the right segment to pursue, and it was chopped from our canvas.
As for interesting experiences, I had slaughterhouses think I was a PETA activist, or a food testing lab convinced that I was a big company marketing guy. On the brightest side, I had a wonderful interview with Len Chappell and even got featured in their monthly newsletter. Jim Fish of Park 100 Foods numerically explained how the cost of maintaining an on-site testing lab was far higher than him outsourcing to a contract lab. That was the final nail in the coffin for our original on-site testing value prop, and we pivoted to contract labs. The pains were clear, but our technology could not address the biggest one, leaving us with a mediocre value prop probably not worth pursuing. The lessons learned from customer discovery have been truly phenomenal. Former Groupon CEO said, "Have the courage to start with the customer. Don't let your intuition override what's best for them." In my words, don't just develop something fancy, listen to what your customers want.
So that story had a somewhat unhappy ending, a bittersweet ending, right? I mean, they realized they go down one path, and the first guy said, your on-site's just not going to work. The finances don't work of on-site, and they went off-site and they realized their product wasn't good enough to compete in these off-site testing areas. But at least they had that discovery, and they discovered what they needed to discover to move forward.